All right, Griscom, go ahead. The gem. What do we got?
So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm sure folks have seen the news, but tomorrow there is going to be a massive strike in the rideshare app industry. This actually is very likely to be the largest ever tech/gig worker strike that we've seen, especially in recent years after this massive strike drought. And people are organizing primarily around three specific demands, which is, fighting against low pay and debt that a lot of these drivers face, to win security for the workers, because Uber, even though they say that these people aren't employees and they can't be, fired or whatever, they deactivate people's apps, and then they're basically can't make any money, and there's no recourse for them, and certainly, to secure a livable income for folks. And not only is this strike desperately needed, but it's very strategic in its moment, because Friday, Uber is releasing its IPO, which, as I've read recently, is looking like it's going to be a $91 billion valuation. And not only is it significant because of that, but we're really looking at this question is, when Uber goes public, what's going to happen to drivers? And within their S1 filing, Uber admitted that they've been lowering fares for drivers, and that they're very likely that they're going to need to do more in the future. They were $1 billion in losses in the first quarter of last year. So as you have more and more investors who are demanding more and more profit, it's very likely that workers are going to see, more decline in their paycheck. So having the show of force right now is absolutely massive, especially mobilizing a bunch of workers. We've talked about our atomized, there's no water cooler, there's not a space where people are spending time together. So trying to get that organizing work is absolutely, is very difficult, but it, has the potential to be really serious. Just in New York City, the New York Taxi Worker Alliance says there's likely to be 10,000 drivers who are going to be logging off the apps tomorrow. So the results could be very significant. There's 3 million drivers worldwide for Uber, and from what we've been reading, what I've been seeing recently, this protest has actually moved outside the United States, and there actually are going to be international, solidarity with people logging off of the apps as well. So we could see a very significant shift here. And, we have to remember, for example, that, Uber workers, EPI did an analysis, really on average, even though Uber likes to say, these people are making $19 to $24 an hour. When you're talking about how much they're paying, for gas and all these other expenses, including paying their own Social Security and payroll taxes, that most workers are coming off with only around $9.21 an hour. People are very much being paid in poverty wages for one of the not profitable, but for one of the highest valued companies in the world.
Yes.
So Uber and
Lyft
Lyft
is causing a lot of extra pollution in the air.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And especially because people
and traffic deaths.
And people are sitting around idling in their car. But Uber and Lyft, they blew up after one of the greatest recessions in modern history. And what did they do? They had a lot of workers who were very desperate for cash. And Uber especially has one of the highest worker turnover rates. Most people who drive for Uber are really only doing it for 2 months. And it's not because these people are desperate and don't need cash. It's because they're so desperate and need cash that they're doing it in the first place. And they realize how quickly it becomes a bad deal. Because up front, you get a lot of incentives from the company to drive. And those start to become more and more difficult to obtain. So as people are going forward, they end up making less and less money. So instead of trying to work to retain their workers, Uber's business model has basically been predicated on a model where you extract as much as you can from people, spend them, and then replace them. So this replacement model is absolutely not viable for workers, and it's important for them to be standing up. And you see, this is why Uber has been so focused on creating self-driving cars, because they don't want to have workers to pay in the first place. But at the end of the day, they won't have a viable service if it's not for the drivers. So because they've had all these drivers who are moving in and out of the app, there's less incentive for people to stand up and fight. They just move on. So trying to organize people like they're doing tomorrow is absolutely the best way forward, because we're seeing so many people in this country are going through in and out of Uber and a lot of these other gig services and leaving and not creating better circumstances for everyone by standing up. And there's so many people who are really affected by Uber's policies. I just want to shout out Lee Carter in Virginia,
Carter,
who said that he drives for Uber and he's going to be going on strike tomorrow. He's the delegate in the 50th district in Virginia, a really incredible person, and so many other stories of wonderful people who are really, just trying to get by and trying to make a little bit of extra cash and are really being exploited by a company that makes massive profits, has been able to skirt basic worker regulations by, bullshit classification on what their employees are, and by considering them not to be employees, and by a government that very much has allowed this to happen. So absolutely solidarity with all workers, all workers in general, but especially tomorrow with all rideshare workers, and hopefully we'll see a big showing tomorrow.
Fuck rideshare companies.
Yeah,
They're a terrible, pernicious influence on the environment, workers, and basically everything else.
Oh, yeah.
And public transportation, which we need to survive as a species.
And just
literally.
real quick before this
Yes.
comes on my mind, let's not forget how horrible Uber and Lyft were a couple years ago when they were creating very predatory lending services to their workers. So they were trying to get people who needed to have a car. They were giving them financing, and it was really bad financing for people. And that program has ended now. But it just shows the way that they treat people as so expendable and trying to profit basically off of their employees. I'm absolutely wicked.
Well, and you sort of touched on some of this, David, but basically, like, neither of these companies is profitable, right, at this point. And the thesis for their IPO is that automation, or basically their market share plus automation, will lead to their business model eventually being profitable at some point.
That's definitely a part of it, and also just continual growth. So the idea is that since Uber is growing so much year in and year out, that even though that they are funding a loss, they're funding it through investors, so people who are in early can cash out. And basically, what's happened now is you have all these private investors who are in early. They don't want to support them anymore, so that's why they go public. It's basically to get a new group of people. But the problem is, these public investors are going to be much more hungry for profit. So yeah, you're going to see squeezing. And I mean, Uber up until the end of last year, after those accidents where they're self-driving cars, they were spending $20 million a month to try to develop this technology.
They bought the entire robotics department at, is it Carnegie Mellon maybe, or some sort of Pennsylvania base?
It was in Pittsburgh, and that's why if you were in Pittsburgh, they were testing them there pretty heavily.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus Christ.
It was supposed to be like, we're going to do partnerships with Carnegie Mellon's robotics, and it's like, we're just going to own these guys and make them try to
and with the city government of Pittsburgh, so you can see how they're able to get into those areas.
I heard some stories recently from frankly victims of this about how even like the position of these rideshare apps at the Newark airport, like basically positioned in such a way that protected like drivers, and then maybe there was some money that might have gone around local Newark politics that local and state politics that might have shifted those arrangements.
Newark? Can that do that in Newark politics?
Yeah. What a shock.
Does money have an effect on?
No. I mean, I'm sure it was
those guys.
I'm sure it was just ideas. You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.